All right. Here we go. Offline. Sure, we're streaming. Hey, there we go. We are live. Off and running. So it is 11 o'clock Los Angeles time. Welcome to another exciting episode of Did Ya Know That? So we will give this a minute here for people to join us before we dive in deeply into it. Welcome. Our topic today, that of course, again, for those that are joining us for the first time, in the excitement of Did You Know That? You pick the topic. So we usually do a poll. We'll have 4 items, and you guys go ahead and poll on that and go from there. So today's topic, the winner last week was topology. So I'm going to run through and show some things about how we can use the topology brush. I'm going to show how we can use the ZRemesher and maybe a couple tricks that people may know, may not know, and also ZSphere Topology. So we can really have a conversation and understanding the difference between the three. So we've got obviously other Pixologic people here for us to help with any questions going through the chat that I can't catch in time. So please do feel free to send any questions that you may have, and I'm keeping my eye on the chat, so to make sure if there's any questions I can ask and through there. I also again want to highlight for those maybe that are unaware, we have announced the ZBrush Summit for 2017, so you can register for that. So you want to jump to this page. It's going to be in October this year, October 5th through 8th. That's the key thing. 5th is the sculpt off. So if you want to partake in the sculpt off, you could just hit on this apply to complete. If you want to keep getting updates and information, you're going to want to do a free registration right here. Okay, so we have announced it. So the presentations will take place 6th, 7th, and 8th, which that's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Of course, you're welcome to be here on site physically and join us. Or if you prefer to watch it online, everything will be streamed online as it always is every year. So I just wanted to again touch base on that because it's a new announcement and want to make sure everyone knows about that. So is everyone repeat? Anybody new here that's never sat in Did You Know That before? Because I'm always intrigued to see who is the new person that's signing up for my madness and chaos that we're about to embark upon here. So let me, I'm going to minimize, make sure that I just want to make sure my taskbar, I like to automatically hide that. I'm a bigger fan of hiding that taskbar. Might be from my usage of the Mac. I'm so used to doing that as well. Okay, so again, we're going to be taking a look at the topology brush. Kingsley's going to be putting up the straw poll from time to time about items. So I see that Blands, you want to talk about shaders. We can see, is there any, what specifically about the shaders that you want to know? Because that's actually one of the topics for that's a possibility for the next Did You Know That's that come around when we put up that string poll. So straw poll. So I want to touch base on, again, the 3 topology features, the ZRemesher, the Topology Brush, and ZSphere Topology. So let's get into this. Let's make this happen. I've made a beautiful sphere. I've been working on it for a while. It's gorgeous. Just wonderful. It's wonderful. Okay, so let's Let's start with some ZRemesher because it's the simplest one. It's the easiest one that we all have that we can start using. So I'm just going to grab the demo head and we're going to divide him up a little bit more just so he's smooth. And let's turn that into a Dynamesh so we don't have clean geometry because right now he's got clean geometry. And I just deleted my subdivision levels just because ZBrush is going to ask me do I want to keep them, and we don't really care about them right now, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete those and let's just see what we can get at maybe 32. When I'm dynameshing stuff, I like to kind of start really low, and that gives me a gauge of like, oh, okay, that's clearly not enough resolution. So I'm going to undo, and let's see what 128. It's getting better, but clearly not enough. So I like to kind of go up in stages, so I don't go crazy putting millions of polygons that isn't really necessary for maybe what I'm trying to do. Right? So I'm starting to get better. This is actually enough to remesh, right? This is also the key understanding of when you guys are going to do any type of remeshing, specifically also ZSphere remeshing. So something to think about for this is if I take, let's say, this dog, right? And let's say we've been working on him. We got some subdivision levels here. Let's start putting some gorgeous sculpt on this. My go-to brush here. Yes! Yes, you've got little dots all over you. There. Right? So doing something like this. So we're starting to sculpt it. We're sitting at 2 million, right? And then I divide again, and then I'm sitting at 8 million. There is not really a point of sending this to the ZRemesher, because then you're sending 8 million polygons to the ZRemesher, which it's got to calculate and figure out. If we really look, we're trying to, when we remesh here, we're trying to do a couple things. Number one, we're trying to reduce the polygon count. That's what we're trying. We're not trying to keep 8 million. We're trying to reduce the polygon count. Number two, we're trying to create a flow to the geometry that sits better and works better with the actual sculpt and the dog. And then that's the third thing. The key word is the sculpt. So the ZRemesher is looking at all the changes that are happening here sculpturally and trying to maintain those as much as possible. Drust, if you can look back at the comments for me, if you're in here about the shader, and throw it in my Skype so I can see what. That way I don't have to go looking for it. Thanks, buddy. So there is, again, no point in me sending 8 million. And the reason why I'm saying there's no point, because if I walk down, I'm at 2 million. There's really no difference there. Specifically for what we're talking about, remeshing something. Right? Even if I get down to this level at 511,000 polygons, there is really no point. And like, there's a point here where like, okay, this is enough. I'm just trying to make a remesh of this dog and give clean geometry. So I want to highlight this because there's people sometimes where we want to try and send something that's 8 million and 10 million to the remesher, and it might not be necessary. Specifically, if you have something that has subdivision levels. Why not drop it down a couple and then send that? That'll make all your remeshing faster, right? Because now it doesn't have to calculate 8 million polygons. It only has to calculate, in this case, 511,000 polygons. Okay, so think about that too, why we're working here and why we're looking at this ZRemesher. So let's bounce back to the head because it's a great representation of how I can show also the difference. Okay, so I've just, again, Dynameshed this. Wait, I'm catching up on some comments here. Sweet, thanks. Oh, okay, talking about the dog tail. So, obviously, I'm the remesher, and raise of hands, who's already used the ZRemesher, which I'm assuming all of us have, maybe not. It'd be interesting to see if you have not used the remesher in here. Go ahead and throw your hands up in there. So what I want to cover today is some items that you might be helpful for you. Number one, and number two, I like to cover some of these options. Okay, so we got a mesh that isn't very clean, right, in the far as the geometry. And our goal here is to reduce the polygon count and start creating maybe a flow that maybe goes around the eyes, starts coming down the brow here down to the bridge of the nose, and just has a flow that follows the sculpt that we're working on. All right. So let's look at just what the default gives us. So I have symmetry on. So again, that's hitting the X key as an Xavier or X-Men. Okay. So, oh, thanks, Pierre. Pierre's in here. You've used it a lot, I'm sure. So just clicking on this, right, we are now telling ZBrush, I want my target polygon count to be about 5. What does that mean to you? That means about 5,000 polygons. So that's a target polygon count. That's not an exact number. That's giving a range depending on the mesh, because the algorithm kicks in and goes, hey, 5,000 polygons isn't really enough to maintain what this sculpt's looking like. And that's also what this little button adapt is telling the application. It's telling ZBrush, hey, when this is on, really look at the sculpt and work on it that way. So let's go ahead and remesh this. So take a second here. And again, this is going back to why I was talking about, why do I need to send 8 million when I can probably send something that's probably 1 million or 500,000 polygons. Okay, so once this is done, we'll see what we get. And again, we're trying to reduce our polygon count, and we're trying to create a topology flow that fits better with what we have sculpturally going here. So here's what we have. So let's do this. Let's just do that one. Let's undo this. And what I want to show you is there's actually 2 different algorithms to this. Okay? So if I hold the Alt key as an alternate, okay, and then tap the ZRemesher, you're going to get actually a little bit of different algorithm running. So sometimes what I like to do when I'm working on a mesh is I'll try, this is the first thing I do. I don't play with any settings. I see by default which one maybe is giving me a better result, right? So looking at this, you might be like, well, I don't really see any difference. Let's really dive into this, right? Look right in here, right where the clavicle's coming in. See, that's very different. See, the flow's more coming across, and then see here in the neck, it's coming in here, where this has got kind of different kind of bridging, right? Look right here in the cheek, right, or your zygomatic. See, there's a 5-point star mesh, and see, it's not happening there, right? It's a little different there, right? Look at above the mouth, right, or even the bottom of the lower lip. It's very different there, right? So there is some subtle differences here. So sometimes it's convenient to try both before I start diving into all these options. I'm going to stick with the green one because I just like what's going on better in the eyes specifically. I like what's going in the nose and the ears. Like, yeah, I can see right here it's kind of losing the ear a little bit more, where that one seemed to be keeping that flow a lot better. And you can see there's less geometry being used at the nose, so there's more being used here, and that's what's happening with the mouth. There's more being used here than here, right? So I'm going to stick with the default one. Again, this is holding the Alt key when clicking on ZRemesher. The green one is just tapping on ZRemesher. Okay, so there you go. So here let's start playing at some more options here. So I'm going to undo this, okay? And we're going to start looking at what we can do. So the first thing you're able to do as a user is control the geometry a little bit by using our ZRemesher guides brush. So I find that try not to throw curves at it, right? Because then you're kind of trumping the ZRemesher, which the code written to be kind of an automatic retopologizer, cleaning up the mesh as fast and quick as possible. But there's times where we kind of want to push it in a direction, okay? So, and as far as seeing a game-ready mesh, yeah, actually, I've talked to many game artists that use the ZRemesher, and in some cases, it gets them all the way to where they need to be game mesh. If not, it gets them to be at least, 80%, 90% there, and then they just do some simple different changes for remeshing. So yeah, there are some game artists that will use the ZRemesher, and it can get them really far in their mesh to where they want to do it. But there's always some kind of tweaking that they might want to make and people want to do. So here we go. Let's take a look at these guides. So this is going to work symmetrically. Your draw size is going to play a role on this, right? So the bigger I go, you can see the larger the points of interest are. Okay? So if I go to a smaller draw size, hold on, my screen just went completely black here. 1 second. Yeah, we're back. Hey-oh, there we go. We're back in the mix. Sorry about that, but this gives me an opportunity to introduce you people to something that we've started here. And when we say we, I mean me. So it's an ongoing joke. I like to walk around the office here and kind of poke a little fun at everybody. We have fun here in the office. And one of our colleagues here, the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle. Sometimes, you know, when things happen, like let's say what just happened right here, I like to say it's Kyle's fault. I'm sorry, it's Kyle's fault. That's all I got to say. So we've started our own little emoticon here within the office called ABBK, as in always be blaming Kyle. See? But the best part is it also works with Kingsley, which you all know as well. So the ABBKs can be flowing around everywhere. And we're really looking at maybe I'm going to start a hashtag blame Kyle ABBK. We should just hashtag ABBK and get this out there because it really rolls off your tongue. I know Kyle's ecstatic about this right now, ABBK, but I'm gonna make an emoticon. I told him I'm just gonna jump on his little Facebook there and we'll make ABBK Kyle and we'll make an ABBK Kingsley. So thanks for participating, everybody. I like it. We're involved. Let's get back to what you actually came here for and talking about some remeshing. All right, so now we're back in business. So again, I apologize for that, but ABBK, that's all I got to say. So we were talking about the guides here, and I was touching base on the draw size plays a role. So if you go to a bigger draw size, right, you can see the yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black. Compared to a smaller draw size, you get more. So you're going to get a more defined curve by going with a smaller brush size. So I'm just going to stay relatively small here and just say I kind of want the geometry to flow that direction. Again here, there is very something specific happening to when you're remeshing with a ZRemesher. It's looking at the sculpt. There's an algorithm coming into play. So you don't need to go like nuts in here. So you don't need to sit here and start doing this, right? This is not necessary. Okay, so that's what I mean by you only need sometimes a couple curves, and it's a trial and error. Maybe you want to make sure the flow of the geometry goes like this. Let's just say, and then because we can remesh fast, we can just experiment. And this is another reason I'm going back to the very beginning of why send 8 million, 6 million, 5 million. We don't really need to do that. So I'm going to stick with this. We have symmetry mode on. We'll remesh this up and get going on that. And we're remeshing, and we're remeshing. So yeah, we're back bland. So you should see us now and hear me fine. I hope it's on my side. It's coming through. Let me adjust my webcam here a little bit. So see. So there we go. So now I've remeshed this, and it's trying to put as much as it can in a circular fashion where it can, right? So again, these guides can help you, right? And I can delete any of them by holding the Alt key and just drawing over top, and you can see that deletes the guides. So if I want to redraw, maybe get in here a little bit closer and really look at the flow of the eye that's happening, and maybe giving it something like that, and then saying, let's make sure a flow comes like this, and let's even take it to the point where let's have it make sure it's really looking at that mouth flow that maybe I want to try and get here, and then I can remesh that. Yeah, quick commercial break. I like that. Or we say now for the rest of this stream, ABBK. So again, the guides is just to get something to help push it in a direction. Now, you do have some control here with the guides and saying how much of a little shove push do you need in that direction, right? So you can see this is getting a lot better now. So you can see sometimes less is more, right? So you can see this is actually pretty good. It ain't bad at all right there. That's looking nice. I'm happy with that, especially as a sculptor. For sculpting, that's nice. This isn't bad. Maybe I play with it to fix that part right there. The nose looks great. The flow here is starting to look great, right? So you can see the improvements I'm making here as we start playing with this. Now, I'm going to undo, and what you can do is this curve strength. Now, how often do I play with this curve strength? Probably almost never. I hardly play with that curve strength. We've worked really hard at finding out what these defaults are, and they work really well. Okay, so the curve strength, the higher you put this, the more you're telling ZBrush, hey, I want actual geometry to flow exactly where this curve is. So if I go all the way to 100, it's going to try and actually put an edge flow where these curves are. So in most cases, I find going all the way to 100 is not going to give me that best result that I want. You can saw even at 50, I was getting nice results. Of course, if we tried, here we can try 90, and let's see what we get. So we'll ZRemesh this. A lot of times, again, this is why I don't really play with this. I just go ahead and use it at 50, and I get nice results. Kingsley's going to put up that straw poll, or Kyle. So for the next topics, again, if you're new to Did You Know That? You guys vote on the topic for the next meeting. So we have 4 items that you can choose from. We do a voting pool, and you go from there. So there's my result with the curve strength at 90. Not too big of a difference. We didn't save the other one, but you can see, understanding now what this slider does. And of course, the lower I go, the less it's using the curves as the kind of, hey, push the geometry this way. All right, so the slider above that is your adaptive size. Excuse me. So that's controlling this button. So this adapt, okay? That's controlling the ratio that we're allowing the ZRemesher to have with the geometry. So I'm gonna delete all the curves. So to do that really quick, I'm gonna go to stroke. Okay, I'm gonna go to curve functions, and I'm gonna hit this delete button. That'll allow me to delete all these curves. Again, I'm going to the stroke, curve functions, whamma jamma, hit that delete button, and they're all gone. Okay, so back to this adaptive size. The higher you put this, the bigger of a ratio you're allowing. Okay, and what I mean by that, allowing something that's perfectly squared to something that's really long triangled. So the point of interest is very different. So here, let's actually launch Photoshop so I can draw this out for you all to understand what this is doing. Okay, so give me a second. Let me launch the old Photoshop here and get back here. Come on, launch Photoshop. So again, I want to think about the controlling of the geometry. So there's times maybe where I'm making something and I want everything to be as squared as possible when I remesh it with the ZRemesher. And there's times I don't want it. I'm making an organic piece. So you got to think maybe really squared is I might be doing scan data, or I'm doing something maybe hard surface, and I want to try and keep it all equally squared shape. So let's make a new document here. Yeah, we don't need 300 DPI. That is not necessary. And let's say OK. There we go. So again, the adaptive is controlling my ratio. So from having, in essence, a perfect square to how long of a rectangle are we allowing, right? So if we start pushing that slider up, 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 you're telling the remesher, okay, you can go from a square to a really long rectangle, right? So what it's looking at, one of the things is the ratio difference between like this edge and this edge. You're allowing that ratio to be that much larger, right? So if you look at where the default is around 50, you're more sitting in this area where you're not allowing a really long triangles. Okay? Compared to if I start upping that slider, okay, you would do something more like that. Okay, you're allowing that big change. Okay? So I see Cub asking about when using ZRemesher, do you want to fix a few polys? The flow? Yeah, I can use ZModeler, and when we get into ZSpheres, you might want to even use that. So we're going to take a look at that because I've used that to fix some geometry as well. So I'm just fixing my webcam because you guys don't even see me. All right, so everyone get this. That's pretty much what's happening here. So I'm going to close down this Photoshop. We don't need this open. So that's what this adaptive slider's in essence helping control. It's one of the major things. So 50 always is a very nice ratio that you're going to get here. So that's correlating with that button. So the half button's the same button. The double button is just in essence polygon count. So instead of using the slider, right, it's saying whatever my geometry is here, try to double it, keep it about the same, or keep it half. I very rarely use that. I usually just use the slider and I make my adjustments where I want to go with those. Okay? The other thing that you have for some controls is actually using paint. So you have a color density control here, okay, that you can start playing with. So I'm going to take myself out of polyframe mode, and you can see there's kind of like this pinkish red tone. Okay, so I can now decide, let's just paint and say right here in this area, okay, it's a heart. Aww. I heart your face, demo head. So I'm telling it to have twice the density. Hi, MDM creates. Is that Michael DeFeo? Is that you, buddy? So that color density slider is just saying you're allowing twice as many polygons to be in the heart area. Ah. Okay. So obviously, as I put up the slider, you're going to get a different color of red. Right? So this really bright red, rosy cheeks, Santa Claus red, is saying I'm allowing 4 times the density here when you remesh. Obviously, the thing you guys want to think about, it's going to be a little weird to tell it to go, transition that much sometimes. So you want to think about this when you're doing this. I would highly recommend that if you're going to use this density, when you're holding the shift key, turn off the Z add for the smooth brush so you only keep the color on. And I like to just blur this along the edging, and it's going to help transitional. Because out here, you're not telling it to be twice as dense, right? Dense. Okay? And in here, you're doing twice as density. So by smoothing these edges, it's going to be a little bit slower of a transition into that density stuff, right? And here, I want to see if I can, hold on, I want to fix my webcam because every time I look at my webcam, I see like the back of my head. Hold on, let me readjust this. Yes. Yeah, and then I lean forward. There's not much I can do because I lean forward on my Cintiq. Let's see if I can bring it back. Yeah, there we go. I can do a little bit better so I'm in frame more often. Okay, so now when I remesh this, right, and I go, hey, remesh it. Yes! Yes! Okay, we are telling it to try and put more density where that little pinkish red tone is. And in a sense, when I painted it, it was twice the density, right? So once it's done with this, we'll look and see what our result is. And really, that's the only thing I've added right now, right? I'm not changing anything else. Everything else is at its default setting. So finish that off. Here, we'll turn the color off and take a look. And you can see it's trying to make smaller polygons in this area, can say compared to up in here, even more, right? So if we get crazy, let's get crazy. Let's do a density of 4. And let's see what we get. Just, I don't know. We got to keep it like a heart. Even though Valentine's Day is not here. Hey, by the way, this is a cool way to kind of erase paint. So over here, you got your primary main color and your secondary color. So let's select this black and actually make it white. Okay? And as I'm painting with the red, if I hold the Alt key, I can unpaint. in essence, with the white. Because white is no color, and because secondary is set as white, I can actually use it kind of as an eraser by holding the Alt key. Now, again, I'm going to want to smooth this out, so I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I want to blur this because I kind of want it to transition slowly. I don't want it to be a very harsh change going from just the normal retopo into the 4 times density retopo. So let's remesh that, and let's see what we get. While it's doing that, I'm going to grab something here. Let's grab a flash drive. I just thought of something else I want to show you guys that it would be fun to show. I think it's on my flash drive. There it is. Is it done? Still out there. It's done now. Hold on, sorry. I'm out of frame. Trying to get my flash drive in the computer here. It's on the desktop. Okay, so let's look at what we got. Look how much more dense that is, right? So you got twice as much density happening here now, right? So that's pretty much what that use polypaint option is going to be, and it can come pretty useful depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, so let's continue experimenting here and going on here. So I'm going to get rid of all the color. I don't want any color density. So let's just fill it with the white and call it a day. Now, the next thing we might want to look at is our borders. So let's load one that actually has a border. So this guy has a border. So this is an opening here. And there's going to be times where you're working that when you remesh stuff, you need to keep these vertex points exactly where they're located right here. So this is what the freeze border is. So if I turn that on and we remesh this, you're going to see that these vertex points down here don't change, and you're going to start getting like a fanning happen to the geometry, because that's the only thing we can do, right, is be able to fan that out. So we'll let that finish up. There you go, right? So you can see here it's trying to maintain, and that's why you're kind of getting the geometry like you do here. So really to see that, here, let's drop our target polygon count pretty low. Let's go 800. So 0.8 is 800. And I'm going to go ahead and remesh that now. And you'll see there'll be some fanning starting to happen down there to the geometry. So that's going to become an important option for us. So we'll let that finish up. There we go, right? So you can see it's trying to maintain those points, and it's getting more geometry like this. That's kind of, so you're starting to get more pieces happening like that as much as it can. See, like in here in the back specifically, it's making, it had to do triangles right there in order to keep that. So that's all the freeze border is doing. So you might be, well, why do I need that? Okay, here's a prime example. There's a lot of times, especially when I'm doing the hard surface, if you've been in my ZMod, when we talked about ZModeler, okay, if I took this, right, and I'm using this, and I don't like, okay, this top, and I want to remesh this, right, let's come out of perspective mode. I can do something like this, where now I'm only looking at the top of this, and I'm going to tell it to freeze the border, and I'm just going to tell it to remesh it, and then boom, there you go, it's done. And now I don't have a pole, and now I have something that's quadded, right, as much as possible along the top. So there is times, if you think about it, if we even grabbed, let's say a sphere here, right? We'll divide that up one more time to make it a little more smooth. Let's go ahead and dynamesh this, right? And if we start using, say, our handy dandy trim, let's just say we'll use our trim curve, and I start trimming things like that and like that, you can see what we're getting, right? It's using close holes to just close off the surface any way it can. Okay, so maybe I want to clean this up so I can just show that polygroup only, right? We're going to turn off Dynamesh. We don't need it anymore. Go to ZRemesher and tell it, hey, that border is important to me. I want to make sure it stays welded with the rest of the sculpt. That way, when I sculpt across, I'm not creating a breakage. So then I remesh this, and then there you go. Right? So now when I smooth any of this out, we'll put that on. See, it's all still connected. I'm not losing that capability to sculpt across these points of interest. Right? So this is where that freeze border can come in handy. Okay? Now, you also will get freeze groups. Okay? So this is looking at the polygroup changing and seeing that there are 4 polygroups here. So that is very different than freeze borders. So this is saying use the polygroups themselves as the kind of the freezing mechanism, the freezing point, right? So let's go ahead and remesh that and let's see what we get. Okay, so it's going to look at the red, the purple, the green, and the blue, and it's going to try and maintain those polygroups, number one, and use those polygroups kind of as the guiding factor to our remesh. So you can see I didn't lose my polygroups, and you can see all the point of interest is all connected here, and when I smooth out, see nothing separates. Right? But you can clearly see the geometry is starting to get a little wonky along those borders because I'm telling it to. That's what the freeze groups is telling ZBrush to do. Is hey, I need you to really pay attention to my polygrouping and make sure you maintain that as much as possible. Now, the keep groups is doing something a little different. And let me see. I want to load something that Tolly was kind enough to share with me. I want to see if I still have it. I know. This will give me a second. I don't remember. As always, with flash drive, I put this on. I want to find some. Talk amongst yourselves. Coffee talk. Coffee talk. Neither here nor there. Starbucks or Pete's? What's the better coffee? Go ahead. Talk. Talk. I don't drink coffee, so it doesn't matter to me. Doesn't look like I have it on here. Unfortunately, I might not even have it on my flash drive. Give me 1 sec. I just thought about this tool, so I wish I loaded it before we even started, but I didn't think about it until now, actually. Why does Windows 10 make me unhook the flash drive twice, by the way? Have you guys noticed that Windows 10? No matter what I do, even if it's not being used, I got to do it twice. The first time it's like, no, you're not allowed. And then the second time, sure, now you can do it. Go ahead. I'm cool with it. So hold on, I'm going to go where I think I know where it is. And then just put it on this flash drive really fast. Bear with me for a second. Sorry. I really want to show this because I think this will help show you guys what you can do with that piece. I have too many hard drives and too many things going on. Nope, it's not on here anymore. So let me grab, where are you? Here you are. I think it's on here. This is intermission again. This is when you get your popcorn or bathroom break. So here we go. Let me look at this. Let's see what we got. Come on, a little flash drive. There we go. Let's see. Just looking for something particular. Here we go. Okay, so this is a piece from Vitali, right? So this is part of his insert mesh brushes. So Vitali Bolkarov is who I'm referring to. So this is where he's using a CAD program, right, to make this on top of he uses ZBrush and other programs. So this is something clearly maybe I want to sculpt on now, but it's definitely not sculptable, right? Because that is really ugly. And in fact, if we bring in the original, okay, so I'm going to switch to the Polystar. I'm going to import this original here. So let me get to that model. I don't remember which one it is. Let's try this one. There it is. All right. So this is the original, right? There's no poly grouping. There's no nothing. Okay? So I want to clean this up. So the first thing you're going to notice with this particular model, when I divide, everything separates. Because coming from a CAD program, all they're trying to do is make sure whatever I've made with the curves, that just gives me the surface and keeps the silhouette and the look that I want, right? They're not worried about having to sculpt on it. We're trying to sculpt on things, so we need to fix this problem. So the first thing I need to do is making sure that when I divide, stuff doesn't come apart in pieces, because these are in essence patches as far as a CAD program is concerned. So I'm going to go into the Tool, Geometry, Modify Topology, and then there's a weld points here, and there's a slider right next to it. Okay, so I'm just going to hit this weld points, and then now when I divide, you can see it's all staying together now. But of course, you can see the problem we have and why we need to clean this up is when we start dividing, you're going to get this kind of thing happening. Or like right there's even more ugly. Right? And it's because it's all triangulated. It's ugly triangles, right? It's not equally distributed. They don't look so great. No bueno, no good, right? So I need to clean this up and fix this up. Okay? So we're going to continue moving around here. So I want to say, all right, I need to use this feature that we have in the ZRemesher, which is the keep groups, is what I'm looking to use. Okay? So I want now, hold on, I'm just seeing because on my side, my ZBrush isn't up to date. Are you guys seeing Vitaly's piece right now? Oh, there it is. Okay, it was probably just my browser. Now it's showing. I want to make sure because my browser wasn't showing you guys the piece that I'm actually playing with on my side. Does that, everyone say it with me. Say it with me. What are we using now? ABBK. Right? Kyle, what the heck, man? So, I want to get smart with this and use poly grouping. Okay? So, I'm going to go down here, and this is exactly how I did. So, I want to get to this point. So, you can see this is all nice, poly grouped off. It looks really good. Okay? You've got different polygroups. I controlled kind of where I wanted polygrouping to go. But I don't want to sit here and do it all by hand. So, I want to be as fast as I can. So I'm going to switch back to the one where we imported. We got the welded points. Okay? And we're going to come down here. We're going to go to poly grouping. And I'm going to group by normals. So I'm going to click this, and ZBrush is going to try and look at the change in normals, which is dependent upon that slider. So it's looking at 45-degree changes. So obviously, the lower I go with this, right, and then do group by normals, you can see it starts grouping off more and more and more and more. So this is kind of where I just started to just get pieces starting to separate and get my own poly grouping. And then I started taking the time to go in there. And don't forget, we got Mr. Handy Dandy Z Modeler, right? So this was awesome to do this. I can go here and go to poly grouping, right? And I can even do a flat island and click this and see now this whole thing got the green. Here, I'll click it so it'll change color. There. So see, now it's all purple. So you can use this brush to really help with certain things in here, right? So it could come in pretty handy to start polygrouping things off for you rather fast. So I'm not going to go through the pain of showing you, but this is what I did. Right? So you can see I got different polygroups here. And I want to tell ZBrush to keep these groups. This is different than freeze groups. Freeze groups is more looking at wherever the polygroups are, right? Try and maintain those vertex points at each polygroup. I'm not concerned about that. I'm just trying to remesh this. So let's duplicate this. Okay, so we have the old version and a new version. So one thing that the ZRemesher you want to think about, if we look in, say, this portion right here, specifically right here, these faces, right, and these faces, it's already a nice, perfectly clean, okay? I love it, ABBK. Oh, we got an ABBM happening. Nice. Okay, so what's ABBM? What's the M for now? Now, always be blaming Mike. All right, so I'll always be blaming the mods. I got it. Nice. I like that 3D print. So there's clean geometry already there. So in fact, This is going to be a little bit of an issue for the ZRemesher in the fact that, well, this is already clean, and you're trying to have me remesh it. So I found, especially for this model, to actually crease this by my polygroups, divide at least once, and now I've got more geometry here. So in this sense, having the more geometry is going to help us. But I'm still not going to millions upon millions upon millions of polygons. And then now I'm going to say this looks pretty good, right? And I'm going to tell ZBrush, okay, keep the groups, but I'm going to lose this slider. I'm going to knock this slider down all the way to 0, and I'll show you where that slider will help you. And I definitely want to have symmetry. Okay, so looks like I need to switch to Z symmetry. So in the transform, I'm switching to the symmetry. Okay, and now I have my symmetry points on either side. You can see them. And let's see what we get. Let's go ahead now and remesh this out. And again, our goal is, number one, I want to keep my polygrouping. Number two, I want to use the polygrouping kind of as, in essence, the guide of the flow of the geometry. Okay? And then we're off and running. And then I see someone brought up fixing the hole. That wasn't actually a hole. That was just how the item was positioned to the camera because of those really ugly triangles. It was probably coming from a central point, and then there was a lot of fanning happening. So depending on how the shape is to the camera, it might look like there's a hole, but it's just having a hard time rendering those geometry. That's all that was. It wasn't a hole, actually. So we're letting this finish up, right? And so now it's calculating, sending this 500,000 polygons. I'm telling it to really maintain my polygrouping, pay attention to my polygrouping. I want to keep them, and then also, there you go, try and keep the mesh. Right? So I'm trying to do whatever I can here to fix this. Right? So depending on where I'm looking at and figuring out, do I need to make any other changes? Right? So I kind of, if you look at that, I probably would fix this and make this have more polygrouping as well through here. Right? And then so we can try and constantly testing this and say, you know what, maybe I want even more geometry, and let's remesh that. So 5,000 wasn't enough. Maybe I want to have 10,000. So we'll let that remesh again and go through the process of keeping our groups and seeing what we get. And again, the only thing that I've changed so far is my keep groups, and I've dropped that smooth groups slider down. And then everything else is set at the default, because I usually get the results most of the time that I'm looking for when I'm starting to use the ZRemesher. So we'll let this finish up and get this going. This is when you play music or music to yourself. You make sound effects. So, and this is just a workflow showing how you can use the ZRemesher even to clean up CAD. So then there you go. So then this is what we get. Right? So now this is clean for sculpting. And we've kept our polygrouping. Right? I'd have to say that's a pretty good job for an automatic retopology. We had to wait, what, maybe 20 seconds? Where that would have taken maybe hours or even a day or longer to do. Right? So we're definitely getting a result that I want. And then I've kept the original. So there's nothing stopping me to even, if I want to even project the original into the new one, so it matches it even more, right? And then when I divide, okay, I've got geometry here, and I can keep projecting. And I'm going to making sure it's matching exactly to the original that Vitali did by dividing up and then projecting the original CAD item into the new clean geometry with the polygrouping. Vitali just gave me this piece, Dark and Grim, for just to test with, and then just for me to use. It wasn't for anything in particular. It was more of a testing piece. That's all, because it's something coming from a CAD program, right? So you can see this is what we got. And then right now I can actually sculpt across these planes and these pieces, and I don't have to worry about the triangle count, right? And I can divide up into millions here, and we're good to go. And I'm going to get nice sculpting, because that's what's important to us, is getting sculptural elements. Okay, so the last thing before we move on to the topology brush here, because we're already at 12. Whew. Man, we're moving along here. So if we, let's take something, let's have some fun here. Let's take the dog. All right, let's divide him up so he's smooth. Okay, let's go ahead and let's Dynamesh that. No, I don't want to keep my subdivision levels. I want more resolution, so let's up the resolution on him. No, that's good. Get rid of the subdivision levels. I don't need him. Now, because this is a Dynamesh, and you have to think about what we're doing here. So if I started doing things like, all right, let's turn symmetry mode on, and I just start even thinking about, I'm making some kind of armor for him, let's just say, and I start using polygrouping, right? And I say, okay, that's going to be an armor piece. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my auto masking, mask by the polygroups, which is great for this workflow. I like to work on my armor this way, because now I can't mask into the blue. I can only mask on the piece that I started in, and then I can Control W that. So what I mean by that here, I'll go with a smaller brush size. Whatever polygroup I start on with the mask, that's the only polygroup I can actually mask on in this sense, because I've turned it on now for the brushes. So I can only do stuff like this, right? So if I went into the blue, you can see I can only work on the blue. So I'm like, oh, I kind of want to separate the blue now and have it be two pieces across here, right? I can do stuff like this, okay? So I can say, oh, no, let's do maybe a piece that comes across like so on him, right? And Control W. So we're clearly making polygrouping, right, for specific things, okay? Wait, use everything together and things to look out for using. Okay, so this is where I would want to use the smooth groups, okay? And the reason being is if we look at this, this is not smooth in any sense, right? It's staircase, 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 right? So the mesh already is nice and it's not smooth. So turning this on, this slider here is telling ZBrush, when we go remesh, I actually want you to smooth the polygrouping. So it's almost like coming down here to our deformation, okay? And then I can tell it polish by groups in essence, like this, and see it's polishing them and making them smooth. Or it'd be the same thing if I went to masking, right? And I can start masking by creases or groups here, right? So I can mask by groups. So now it's masked out all the polygroups, and I can inverse that, and now only that part is free, and now I can go to deformation and even polish that differently, right? So there's different ways to go about doing this, okay? So in essence, this slider is telling it, look, the geometry polygrouping-wise is not nice and smooth. When you remesh this, I want you to smooth it out, okay? So now we've got keep groups on. It's telling it pay attention to our polygrouping, right? We've got symmetry. I also don't like what's happening here. See that there's kind of, this is a no-no. I wouldn't do this because then the remesher's trying to maintain this. I don't need it to maintain that, right? That's not important to me. So I can try going to polygrouping, and I can do merge stray groups and see what it did. It just notice and say, hey, these are kind of just straight off groups. This polygroup doesn't really, it's only 2 polygons. They don't share either side. These are only 3, they don't share either side. So how about let's merge those stray groups, and we'll make those be the purple. And you see up here, it also turned these up here into blue. So it's just trying to make it more equally distributed polygrouping where it might not make sense, right? So if you look in here, see really this is kind of by itself compared to the other polygrouping. And same thing here, there's only 2, right, in there. So by me clicking this merge stray groups, see I can get a little bit better polygrouping actually difference between there. And then now let's remesh it. So I want to clean that up. What we're polling for, Kalina, is the next topic for Did You Know That? So this is the segment we do, Did You Know That? I talk about whatever topic that's you guys pick from the previous episode. So people picked topology for this episode, so that's why we're talking about it. So Ashley just put up the straw poll. So you can see our polygroups are being maintained, and now we're getting a nicer flow of geometry there. So when would I not want to use it, right? If you think about it, right? If I'm doing something more like, let's create something very cubical, right? We've already got, excuse me, a nice cube here that I'm working on, and then I start maybe doing some ZModeler stuff to this, right? So we can QMesh, and I start pulling this out, pulling out some more maybe, come this way, say, yeah, that looks good. Maybe this is going to be some kind of weapon that I'm making for a new character. Stretch that out, add an edge loop there, an edge loop there. Maybe we'll do a little bit of, let's do a QMesh along the poly loop. Stuff like this. Okay, so we're starting to make a very distinct looking piece, right? That already has some geometry. So let's go ahead and crease this by my poly group, right? I'm going to say I probably want creasing in here. Probably along those edges we'll say I want those to be creased. I want that to be creased. Okay, so you can sit here and click on them in this way, or you can use this tolerance slider, the Joseph Drest way, as I like to call it. He's a big fan of that. And then when we turn on our dynamic subdiv, right, we'll up this and drop our crease level here. So this is something we discussed in another, did you know that when we did ZModeler that I'm doing? Okay. So now I have a piece like this. And in fact, I kind of want this whole edge loop here to be creased. And same thing there. So I get that result. Now, if I turn this into actual geometry, we've got 5 subdivision levels, right? And I keep dividing and dividing, and I'm working on this. And I maybe start putting some very nice, intricate things in here in this piece. I'm going to remesh it, and I want to keep my poly groupings and maintain that. But going back to this slider is not necessary, right? Because this is already clean here, right? If I drop it all the way back down to low, it's already clean. There's no need to look at that poly group and tell it to smooth it, right? So that is why I wouldn't use the smooth groups, but maybe still have the keep groups. So I maybe would remesh this at this level, right? But I don't need this on right now because I already have nice, clean geometry as far as the edges flow because I started from a ZModeler. Okay, so that's where I would use that smooth groups and not use that smooth group slider. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so I see Joseph's answering a question there as well for you guys. Okay, so make a vote. I see 3D printed. You're saying I vote for NanoMesh. Make that vote, right? So we go by whatever you guys vote, and I have no idea what's even leading right now. So let's move on to the topology brush because there's different ways to topologize inside of ZBrush. Okay, so if we look at this train, let's go ahead and let's load this locomotive. Okay. So when I click on this, right, I've now selected this train brush, right? So I can draw it out, right, wherever I want. And right now I have symmetry on, so I'm drawing the train. So let's really look at this train by itself. So I'm going to modify topology, okay, and I'm going to say mesh from brush. Save, all right? And that's going to give me the selected piece that I had in my insert mesh brush. Okay, so here's the train. And again, this guy was all made in ZBrush. And this was even before the days of ZModeler when I made this. This was, I want to say this is like 404 when I did this, I think. So looking at this piece in particular down here, this green piece, this was made with the topology brush. Okay, so think about, I'm just trying to use the topology brush to get a basic shape here. And then now that we have the ZModeler, I can pile that on there. It's almost, again, like a cake or like an onion that we're doing, right? So here is the workflow that I did to do this. Oh, I like the fish emoji. Emoticon. We're going to get the Kyle ones. Okay, so let's look at how I made this piece and thinking about this topology brush and how it can work. Right? So it needs mesh to draw on. So when I switch to this brush, right, there's geometry here that I can draw on, right, to start creating new geometry. Okay, so what I'm going to do is click on a plane. So I have this to draw on, right? I'm going to turn that into a poly mesh. So it's something that I can actually draw on. And what I'm going to do is tell ZBrush, hey, I actually want to use an image, okay, to do this. VertI, the vote is in the chat. Let's see, Pixologic was the last one. It's a straw poll. So if you go up the chat, you'll see there's a straw poll. Click on that, and then you can vote for what you want the next topic to be, and did you know that we discover. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell in the texture map, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to import an image. Okay, so I'm going to grab an image, and I went on the web and found an image of a train. And then there we go. So this is what I want. Okay, I'm even going to, for giggles, let's change it and make it be actually the length of what it would be on the image, something more like that. So this is all I did. So now what I want to do is start drawing out the topology of this train wheel frame. Right, and looking at this, I have some holes here. I have some holes here. I have a hole here where I want these springs to come in. I definitely have a certain piece happening here. So there's stuff I want to work on here. I'm just focused again on the simplicity of it. I'm just trying to get the simple shape here. I'm not even looking at this part. I'm kind of just looking at this flow right here. Just this piece. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, number one, I'm going to turn on my floor grid, and I'm going to find that red line. So you see that red line right there? That's the symmetry of the X. So here, I'm going to go to draw. I'm going to up my modifiers. I'll make it brighter. And here in the axle, I'll even make it, let's put it at 5. So I can really see. Now I definitely see the lines. I don't have a problem seeing those lines now. Oh, posing is winning right now in the poll. Is it a close one, ABBK? Just living the dream. Kyle hates the ABBK. I got to use it. Is it winning by a landslide, that posing? Okay, so this red line's important to me because I'm going to use mirror and weld. Since this is a symmetrical piece, I'm not really concerned about trying to draw the other side. I can definitely use symmetry with this brush, but I'm actually rather use my mirror and welding. So just like when I talked about the curves, your brush size plays a role. Okay, so if I go to a bigger brush size, you can see I'm getting a different variation right in here with the yellow, black, yellow, black. So what you need to understand is that yellow, black, oh, it's a close one between posing and nanomesh. Thanks, Kingsley. Okay. Oh my goodness, 3D Print says ABBK is going out on Twitter. Yes! We've made it social. Okay, so that yellow, black is, that's a vertex point. Wherever that yellow, black, that's a vertex point to go. So when you draw, I'm going to go really slow. And if I go through that yellow, okay, and then I'm going to go through now this black one, watch the line when I let go. It's going to snap. Boom. So you'd have to snap to one of these 2 points to create the actual vertex point. And then if I do the same thing, I go over here, boom, it snaps. And you can see that orange face that's popping up. That's actually a polygon that we're creating. Okay? So what I want to do is I kind of want to have a little bit more vertex point options here. So I'm going with a little bit smaller brush size. Like for this particular piece, probably in the low 30s, high 20s, somewhere around there. So I can get enough resolution because I'm going to want to have curved surfaces in here, right? So now I can start drawing that out, and at any point in time I can stop. But if I want to come here and continue this, I can snap to the curve. So you see when I'm going from a red to the blue or aqua colored brush size, that's a visual cue to you that I'm switching from the drawing phase to more of the manipulate, add to the curve phase. So there's something that controls that snapping. So in the stroke palette, we have our curve modifiers, and you can see here your curve snap distance. That's controlling the snapping, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to up this just a little bit. Not a lot. I'm going to put it, say, at 20, so I don't have to get so close. And then boom, it snaps. You see there's a red line that pops up. Now I can see I want to continue this curve here. And I want to continue drawing along this. And I'm going to keep drawing until I cross that green line, because that's center point of the world. And this is all I care about. I only care about on this side of the green over. That's all I care about doing. Okay? So there's my first line. Perfect. Okay, this shape now comes around and does this. So I'm going to do this and come to here. Come down, come to here. Don't like that. I'm going to undo. So if you have to, do it in steps like this. Right? Maybe manipulate so you can get a better angle on what you're trying to do here. Got past that green line. Perfect. Okay, so you see I'm starting to get that shape that I want. Well, this has a hole here that I want to put. So I'm going to say, all right, let's make a line that goes here. Okay, and make a line that goes here. Right, and then now I'm going to draw across here, like say something like this. Okay, so I can either draw from here, right, and come across like that. And you can see it's making a green circle and a green circle. Those are your vertex points that are being made. Okay, so I could do this, or I can just say, how about I just draw straight across like that? Right, so now I got those points and those points. I'm going to say I need to draw across like that. And you can see now it's making a polygon. Right? So now I have a basic shape starting to happen. So but what I want to do is I actually want to draw through here, and I want to draw through here. So now every time I go over, this is not one face, right? This is now 3 faces that I have here. So watch this. If I now add another point through here, right, I can start saying deleting stuff. I can say, I don't need it to come here, so I'm going to say delete that and delete that. Okay, so to delete a curve again, all right, I'm holding the Alt key, and I'm just drawing over top of the point of the curve I don't want anymore, and then drawing off a point of that I don't want anymore. And see, the reason why I'm adding these points is now maybe I want to make this hole possible. So maybe do something like this. And this is the only time I would do this. Because keep in mind, doing this is not good. Right? Because what you're doing is making only one vertex point. Right? There isn't 4 vertex points here. There's only 1. So when you're drawing this, you want to draw like this, draw the next line, draw over those, and then draw over those, and see now it makes the polygon. So you want to stay away, okay, as much as possible away from trying to do stuff like this, okay, because you're not going to get anything unless you start doing something like this and like this, right? So you still, this point never got made. So it's very crucial to pay attention to that. So I'm doing it for this because I know I'm going to do this now. I'm going to cross like that. I'm going to say, all right, let's connect that into there. Let's connect across there. And see, now that's creating a polygon there. Right? And now I want to go right there. Okay, and maybe I come across like this. And see, I'm starting to just fan out my geometry to make sense. And again, see, I don't want this little point anymore. Holding the Alt key, getting rid of it. And if I want to clean up all the points, all I have to do is hold the Alt key, draw out anywhere, and you can see everything here got deleted. Anything that can't make a closed shell is going to get deleted. So I'm going to undo this. I'm going to say, all right, I need to make sure this doesn't get deleted. And then boom, see, I can clean up a lot nicer. And now I can start figuring it out. So this brush will only do triangles and quads. ZBrush does not support n-gons. So you can see right here, this is an n-gon. So I'd probably need to come across like that. There's the quad. Okay? Probably want to maybe come across, whoops, that was my arm, like this. Maybe add a point there, right? And maybe just come across that point like this. And then do that. And now that's a quad, and start thinking about, all right, how is this going to interact with everything? Maybe do I want to come across like that, right? And then keep coming across like this, across like that, and just working my way through the curves is all I'm trying to do, right? And then I can clean it up, and now I can get a better look and start figuring out, okay, how can I close this off, right? Do I want to come across like this? And then there it's closed off. Okay. Do I want to now come across here? I'm going to say, it might be best if I actually did something like this instead. Coming through there. So that when I come across here, right, I want to create better geometry. Let's delete this, and come straight across. And then now I can just start coming across here and creating this portion of what I'm trying to make. Okay. Now you can see what we're starting to get here. I'm starting to get what I want. Okay. Notice right here in this region that the geometry is very flat, right? So this is rounded, and so is this, and so is this. So there's just not enough of the topology lines there to support this. Okay. Oh, we're starting to have a battle here. The posing's at 43%, nanomesh at 30%. I'm surprised the ZBrush to Photoshop isn't higher. Now, let me touch base on these really quick. So the posing, we're just going to talk about the difference between posing with transpose and Z-spheres, and then we'll get into transpose master. The nanomesh is nanomesh. We're going to go in there and I'm going to show you different ways to use it across the board. Okay? And the ZBrush to Photoshop is more about using ZBrush as the rendering tool. So that would get me into a little bit of the materials. In essence, using ZBrush as render passing, bringing it all into Photoshop and creating a stacked layer in Photoshop and using it as the compositor. And the brush system was a request from one of the people, is to just dive more into the brush palette in essence. So that's kind of what we would chat about those. Okay, so back to this. So this, I need it to be round. So all I need to do is just add more geometry here, right? Or topology lines. If I want to get really crazy, I zoom in more and do something like that, right? And you can see now it's taken on more of a round shape. You can see this one's not. So here, I'll turn off the texture. See how it's not following that curve exactly? Because all it's trying to do is there's a point there and there's a point there, and I just need to bridge the geometry through there. If I add another one there, see it snaps and looks at that more. So now we have this shape happening. Okay? I'm going to turn the texture back on and say, oh, there needs to be some thickness in here. So how about I come like this and come across and then do the same thing there. And let's make sure I'm making that a closed surface like that. So I want to have a little bit of thickness there for this bridging portion. And do I want the same thing here? You know, I got to decide that. Do I want to come through here and do something like this? Right? And then I can delete that. And now I have this happening. So we'll turn the texture off, and now we got something like that. Okay, and then see this is a triangle down here. I can fix this by just drawing out like that, and then now it's a quad. I've added a point there. Okay, so what I want to do now is turn this into a piece of geometry. So all I have to do is tap on the surface, and then there's my geometry with thickness. Right? So I got to add more thickness to do that. I'm just adjusting my draw size, tapping, and now I get more thickness. No, I want to go bigger. So let's go in the hundreds and tap. There, that's what I'm looking for, something more like that. And now I've got this piece that I can start with. Bam! Has been a popular one I've been using. 3D printed had been in here before, so bam! Right? So this has been drawing on that same subtool. So I'm going to split it from the plane, right? I can use on-mask points or masked points. And now this is the new piece. And again, I wasn't drawing on the other side because now all I have to do is go to geometry, okay? And then I say, all right, let's mirror and weld that over the X, and then there I got the whole piece. And then now we can turn on dynamic subdiv. What does that look like? And we can start using ZModeler to crease things, add edge looping, move edges around, okay? So you can go about it in this sense. So this is a way of using Topology Brush in essence to build like a base mesh and to build something, okay? So you have that capability. Now, doing more with that, I can also use it to repair. I can use it to retopologize the entire thing. So what I mean by repair, where we can do some fun things with this, let's grab a cube. So my handy dandy, we don't need the plane anymore. So let's just use our initialized state. Let's just create a cube here. All right, and let's go ahead and make it bigger. Let's keep it sharp. So I'm going to divide it with the smooth off so we have something like this. Okay? So I want to be able to manipulate this and change things around with this. Or I want to say maybe even take the demo head, right? Or even the dog. Let's use the dog instead. And say, okay, this geometry is cool. I'm liking it, but I'm going to get rid of an eye. Maybe he's got damage to the eye. Maybe he's going to become a zombie dog, and I don't want the eyelids. I want a certain different flow of geometry there, okay? So I'm going to say, let's look at this and go, all right, let's select out just this portion. So I'm going to switch to the select last one. We'll come back to the cube and do something like this, right? So I can just select out what I want, right? And then I can clean it up. I don't want this, don't want that. I want that. I want a nice clean selection, possibly like that. So I'm going to turn on display double properties just so we can see that we are only looking at that portion. Okay? So I want to change this geometry. Okay? I'm not happy with the geometry. I want to change the flow of it. You can actually use the topology brush to do this. And when I mean completely change, okay? So I can say, you know what? I don't know why, but this particular eye is going to have more of like a cube shape that comes out of the eye. I don't know why, but darn it, I'm the artist. So I'm going to say, all right, we're going to make geometry go here to here and come across like this, come across like that. Let's give it some more density, okay, and come in like this. And this is matching, right? It's trying to snap to the eye. See, it's trying to follow the flow. The curves are always being pushed to snap to that eye, right? So I'm just adding more geometry to kind of give a little bit better of a snapping happening here, right? Because the more spans I give it, the more it's going to start following the given flow. Now here's the cool part. Again, if I clean this up, hold Alt, and I click and drag, you can see what I'm making. I'm just making a pattern of geometry, okay? So now if I just tap on the surface, boom, bam, bam, I now have an eye patch dog. What's up? You know what I'm saying? And there you go. So what we've done, let me undo that again. Let me go in slow motion. No, we're not going to do that. You're right, Kingsley. I did do the bam or the boom is what you're saying. Okay, so I am saying to ZBrush, this geometry is the new geometry that I've drawn out, and it's really important to me, and that's the geometry that I actually want. Okay, but there's another portion to this dog, and I need it to weld. Okay, I need it to stick together because I'm going to sculpt across this. Okay, so ZBrush is going, okay, all these points exist here, and then there's all these points that exist here. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the new geometry here, And then we're going to bridge for you to connect it. And in essence, we're using the ZRemesher to connect. Right? So you see how it's kind of rounding? There's something doing that. So if I undo this and turn off this SMT and tap, see it doesn't round. It keeps this squared based upon how I drew it. Right? So if I undo, turn on SMT again, and I tap, see it becomes more round. Undo, turn off SMT, and snap. Boom! Okay? Oh, Kingsley heard me in the office say, BAM! That's why he knew it was coming, because I'm ahead of you guys. So it's a way to patch holes. It's a way to change geometry. It's even a way to make holes. Okay? Think about that. I can also, right, start deleting some of these pieces. Right? And then boom, BAM! Right? Clicking that. So let's turn the SMT back on, tap, and then there you go. Now there's the new geometry, the bridge geometry, and now it's even got a hole in the center. Nice, Mungry Paul. Gaboury. Right? So there you have it. So now I have all this new geometry that I can work with that has nothing to do with the eye. So maybe like I got an eye patch, right? And maybe that's what I wanted to put on this dog was an eye patch over here, and I didn't want, right, the pre-existing geometry to do it. I want this geometry. And there you have it. And then of course now, you know, thinking about it, we can have some fun with this. QMesh, polygroup all, right? I can push this in, right? So I'm giving complete control to what I want this to look like, and then turn this on, and now we have that, and now it's just a sad, sad dog with a cube, right, in there. And there you have it. So, but think about, let's look at it in another sense, though. Let's go back to this cube. Okay, so this is pretty low in geometry. And let's actually go up one more. Let's go up one more. Let me see. Let's divide one more time. There, that's more than enough. Okay, and let's say I do want to maybe put a hole in here, and a circular hole in there. And then maybe that's what I'm looking for to have. Okay, and I want to start building up that geometry. There are many things. Let's take a look at this approach. What if we just looked at this purple polygroup? Okay, we have our topology brush selected, which we know now that this obviously curves that we can draw out and create geometry. Okay. ABBK for the poor dog. Oh, I love it. Kyle, we're bringing it alive. The ABBK is alive and well. I love it. Okay, so what I want to tell ZBrush to do is in the stroke palette, I want to tell it to frame this mesh. So I'm telling it to frame the border, polygroup, and creasing. So if I can just say border, you can see that curve is going around. So wherever I have a border and seeing there's two sides to it, it's going to frame it. So I just want to focus on just this side here, right? So this is why I would turn on display double so I can really see what I'm showing. This is all I care about, just this section. So I'm going to go to stroke, frame mesh. And what this does is it drops, notice when I scroll over, at every point here, it's dropping that, right? So I've got that, and let's, for giggles, let's have the slicing circle be a perfect square, and then just let's see what we get if we do this. Let's go across enough points. Now I'm getting kind of circular portion. And maybe now I want to build this up a little bit. Okay? So I've got the Topology brush. So watch this. I'm going to say, let's switch to polygroup. Let's start drawing that out and hold the shift key. And you can see that just snapped to there. Right? So I can do this visually like that. I can do it polygroup wise like that. So I use the slice to give me a more rounded shape. And then there you have it. So I could have done this all in one swoop. I could have gone to stroke and just had both of these on and hit frame mesh, and there you go. But I also wanted to show that you could do it by a brush. By image 8 ORRR or Okay. Hold on. Dress is sending me in a question. Oh, Dress, you got it. Okay, so now what I've done is I've controlled and I've put points exactly where they are. So what I can start to do is using my topology brush, right? I can start making these points connect. And you see what's happening here is I'm creating those quads in between there. So I'm going to need to start going from here to here, right? And I still have 1, 2, 3, 4 points here to solve. So my goal would be to try and have the same number in the inside ring, in the outside ring, right? But if not, we can start playing with this and figuring out what we can do, right? And going here to here, that's looking good. Starting to get what I want, right? So I want to start playing, manipulating. Let's start figuring this out. So maybe I'll go up into here, into there, right? And you can see, because this span is so big, this is why you need to understand when I draw across here, see it's snapping to that point. Okay? So what might be better for me, instead of snapping to this, right, would be for me to just draw some kind of a circular shape, right? This is, again, the only time I'd probably do this. Beautiful. And then now I'm free to snap this however I want to snap this to, these pieces, right? And it's just going, whoops, I missed one. Going around the curve and continuing to just snap to the already existing points that are on the outside. Doo-doo-doo. And this is when you put some music on, you have some fun. Do this, and let's see. Okay, we need to go to this one, so let's go there. This one. Let's clean this up a little bit. It's in my way. There. And again, I know I just need to get somewhat close to these points, and I'll get what I want. Do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do, 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 and then start coming into here, here, and there. And then now this is what I have. And then now if I tap, you can see what we get. So this is welded perfectly to the already existing, and now I've got this hole in the middle. And it's welded to the existing perfect mesh because of I first originally told it to frame it and drop all those points exactly where those edges are. Okay? So you're going to be able to do, say, something like that if you want to, and have this. Right? So getting a perfect circle in the middle would be me making sure I draw with the slice and then having enough resolution to match. Right? So my problem when I was doing this slice, right, there wasn't enough points. So again, I want to try, if I'm going to do this, I want to try and match up the points as much as possible. Right? So I'm close, but I'm not quite there. So maybe just a tad bit bigger. Okay, maybe something more like that. And now there's more points of interest here for me to snap into. Right? So when I draw this out, whoops. See, there's more points here. So I can start coming across and saying, all right, just this to this, this to this, this to this. And I just continue this process. Right? And then I can say, okay, this one can go here, this one can go here, that one can go here, right? Here to here, right? And I'll add a point there, maybe down the road. Right? So all I'm doing is using ZBrush to finish the pointing off for me, right? So you guys get what I'm doing here, right? So as long as the points out here are kind of somewhat matching in here, you'll be able to do that. Okay, and this is me using the topology brush more as a fix. Like I want to fix geometry, I want to change the geometry, not as a completely retopologizing tool. Right? It's a very different type of workflow that I'm I'm having this brush do. Oops. Okay? And then, of course, you can use this brush to retopologize the entire thing if you want to. Okay, so the last one that we can do, and remember, the key here is your draw size and trying as little as possible doing stuff like this, right? Because then you're going to start doing things like this, and so you're going to get weird results. I'm doing it on here because I know I'm going to be branching outward to the sides, right? That's the only reason why I'm doing that, okay? So if you're going to retopologize the whole thing, all right, keep in mind you want to be crossing over. Think about it as crossing over. You want this kind of stuff to happen. You want to just start crossing over so things can get made. So here's what's nice, another thing before we move on to Z. If you do something like this and do something like this and you can't keep your hand that steady, then you want this to kind of smooth out a little bit more. So, say I have something like that and I want this to smooth a little bit more. In the stroke, there's a smooth button here. Okay, so if I turn up this slider and click it, it's smoothing the curves. So let's open this up to be really strong and watch. See that? So it's really rounding these up. So now I know I'm getting a very nice smooth. Now the thing to be careful is this curve is starting to come off the surface. See that? See it's coming off that surface there? So how do we solve that? I solve that by going here, going to our curve modifiers, and I snap distance, turning this up a lot more. And see now it's starting on the curve and drawing across. So starting on the curve and drawing across. There you go. Problem solved. Right? And then now I know, right? I'm getting what I want. So now I can go back to dropping this way down again and it being normal. And then there you go. And now I know I can get something this round, right? Or if even forget about round, what if you're being very specific with your topology, right? And you want to do something like this and then like that, right? And you want it to be right squared, and you see how I want to come through now maybe and come through here, but you can see that that line of the topology where it's really sitting in space is where I want it to stay. Okay? But you can see the curve is not following that right now, because the only thing that's important is that green point to that green point, and then ZBrush is just, okay, well that's from here to here, it's just straight across. I don't even know anything about this arc in the curve. The only time it knows about the arc in the curve is if I draw across it. Now it knows about the arc in the curve. I actually wanted to say, you know what? I want it to smooth out. So I'm hitting the 6th key, right? And seeing the curves now sitting, trying to sit exactly where the lines are going more and more, right? So now when I'm drawing across, I know this point is sitting exactly where I want that to be, right? And all I was doing was hitting this smooth with the shortcut is the number 6. Okay? So I'm trying to control this a little bit as well and saying I want very distinct type of geometry coming out of this topology brush. Again, this is happening here because you see the curve is pulling away from the surface. So I can definitely fix that, right? We know now if I turn up this snap distance, right, I can start snapping to the points, and I can even start here if I want, and then going to that point, and then there you go. And then I can clean it up. We'll go with a little bit bigger brush size, tap, and then there you have it. Yes! Nice, quick, simple base mesh, clean geometry, and there we go. Okay? So that's the topology brush. The last one, because we're running out of time here, that I want to touch base on, I don't know how much time we're going to have with this, is I want to use ZSphere Topology. So there is some fun stuff that you can do with this and useful, and you can edit existing topology if you want. All right, so let's stick with the demo head here, right? and I want to start editing his topology. So one thing that you're able to do is if I grab a ZSphere, okay, this is how I start using the topology with the ZSpheres. I'm going to tell it in the rigging section, I'm going to select that head that plops it into place, which is in essence being used as a guide and a reference. Okay, this is also going to posing, if that's going to be our topic next time, posing. And then in topology, where it says select topo, I'm actually going to click on that and select it, and all the topology falls into place. And then now I can hit edit topology, and now I can sit here and I can delete and edit points at my will, right? So I can hold the Alt key, see, and I can delete stuff that I don't want, okay? And drawing out points, it's all about the selection process that you have. So what I mean by that is when I click here, you can see that is now the selected vertex point to draw from. So you that all that white arrows are kind of pointing, and you've got the red. So if I click here, see now it's showing this is the next point, and then if I click here, it bounces back because now this is a closed surface. So then I can click here, and it bounces back, and it's now a closed surface. Okay, so let's delete this topo, and let's just make some new topology. So all I have to do to draw out, again, is just click, 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 and then click again, and see it closes up. And now the next one is like, okay, you want to continue going down the eye. So what you need to be careful of, you can see how this point is now selected. You don't want to just come over here now and just click this, because it's making an edge that's connecting those 2 points. Okay? It's making that edge going from this point to that point. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is either deselect by, if I just rotate with right click, it'll deselect. I can double tap in the open document, it will deselect. So now I can start from here and start working my way up like so. Okay, I don't want to, now that this point is selected, I don't want to just come over here and click, right? So again, I can right click and see now that's deselected. See, if I right click twice, it's deselected. Come over here and now I can start drawing, right? Or if I now want to come over here, I can just tap in the document twice, come over here and I can start drawing. Or if I want, I can hold the shift key and tap on the point that I want to go to next and start drawing from that point. Right, so what we're doing is we're creating our own topology that has, in essence, a skin from the original topology. Okay, so I'm creating this topology flow in a certain way that I want. Now, of course, we're doing point by point by point here. So I can click on every vertex point, or if I want to, I can hover on any of the edge and you see a yellow line pops up, right? So I'm going to click here, tap, that adds a vertex point on that edge, and you can see I'm actually splitting the edge now through, and I'm making this where it used to be one face, 2 faces, right? So if I now want to come across here, I can click there, click to there, click to there. And now I have that geometry. So not only can I click on the vertex points, but I can click right on that edge, okay, that we have. So what I want to be able to do now is see what does this look like. So if I hit the A key, as in ABBK, you see a preview of your mesh. And now what we're doing, though, is we're previewing the skin, right? So you can see by default now, well, not by default, but the preview button is on. So you can see the letter A is the shortcut. Okay, and I click on this, and I let go. So JJ Motion, are we talking about my broadcast, or is it somebody else's? Oh, the one from yesterday. Okay. So preview shows me how is this geometry looking, right? So the density slider is saying how many preview subdivision levels do you want to see. So this is going to show you, this is what it would look like at level 5, right? This is what it looks like at level 1. So for this purpose, I'm fine with just looking at it for level 1. Then I can come out of preview mode and say, okay, let's continue this process. All right, so if I say, let's continue drawing geometry. So I'm going to come down here and just continue to work my way through this. I don't like where that point went. I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here to here and split through here. Would make more sense, right? And then now go from here to here and just start going around the mesh in the manner that I want it to go around. And if I have to, I can go this direction, right? So I'm going to go from this point to here, to here, to here, and then I'm going to deselect that, click from here to here, and just continue this process. So this is a very tedious and slower pace, okay? But what comes in handy where I really like using this is specifically for hard surface. So let me show you an example. But before we do that, there's one other thing I want to show you with this as well. When you guys hit A, we're just seeing like a nice preview, right? There is a menu down here called Project. If I turn this on, okay, and I hit A, and I start adding density, look what it's doing. It's projecting the sculpt below that I'm actually drawing my topology out, right, onto, okay, and putting it, that sculpt, into this new geometry. Again, all I did was turn on this project option right here, and then I told it to give me the preview of that and make sure there's enough density. Right, so you see it's even grabbing the faceting, right, because this is very low-key faceted, and I'm drawing new geometry and projecting that low faceting piece in. Okay, bam, there you go. Not only that, I can even say, you know what, let's turn projection off and let's do a skin thickness here. Let's add a little thickness and preview that, right, and we don't need this much density. And now I'm getting a very thick skin, so I don't need it that thick. And see, now I've got a thickness there. With polygrouping, mind you, and creasing already in place. Right? So the reason why I'm showing this, you got to think, what if I want to make like sunglasses for this guy? Is it better to use the Topology Brush? Is it better to use the ZRemesher? Is it better to use the ZSphere Topology? Which one is going to be the better one? And it all is going to come down depending on what my scenario is and what I'm trying to do with this. Okay? So I know I can get thickness now with the Topology Brush. I can get thickness also with this, right? The Topology Brush, right? So this is, give my thickness there. Okay? And what if I want to start putting holes, right? So looking at this, let's start bridging across this. So let's go from here to here to here. And let's go up here, and then we'll come across this way, and then we'll bridge across that. That's good. We'll bridge across that. That's good. So remember, ZBrush can't do n-gons, right? So you look at this right here. This is an n-gon, right? Because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. Watch what happens when we preview, right? We get a hole, right? Because we're telling ZBrush, hey, I actually want a hole there. So I can either close it up, or I can actually start turning up this max strip length, right? And then see if ZBrush can finish it off for me. Right, so even if I maybe did this, right? You can see ZBrush is trying to finish off. So this is making an n-gon, so it's trying to finish off that way. Right? This max strip length controls that. So if I knock this down to 4, it's going to keep that as a whole. The minute I put this past 5 or 5 and above, it tries to close it off. okay, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points here on one face. So I'm telling ZBrush, whoa, when you have that problem, have the max strip length 5 or more, it'll close it off automatically for me. So if I'm using this for a retopologing tool, I actually like to keep it at 4, and that way I can visually see if I've made a mistake, and I can say, oh, I didn't want a hole there. Oh, I missed that completely. Let me come across and let me finish off this geometry, because this is really, that's really what I'm looking for, not the hole. Smart pizza. Man, pizza sounds good right now. So this max strip length is telling ZBrush to figure out the geometry closing off. So something I like to do if I'm going to use this tool, and we're going to get to a hard surface point here in a second with this, is if I start dividing this up, right? Instead of sitting there trying to figure out my topology in the state of why I'm drawing it out, I will tend to do this. I will take my mesh, okay? I'm going to make 2 colors again here, pure black and pure white, right? The V key as in Victor, okay, we'll swap it. I'm going to fill this with white. So color, fill object. And this is going to allow me now, I can hit the V key and I can draw black. And what I'm going to do is in the stroke, okay, lazy mouse, I'm going to turn this radius up a lot more, give it a lot more smoothness, maybe to an 8. Okay, we'll give this a radius of 20 maybe, and now I can do this, and I can start drawing a little bit smoother lines. Okay, so I can go up more. Let's even go this high in geometry. So I can make a small draw size and kind of figure this out. What do I want? So we'll color fill that again, switching to black. Oh, hold on, my keyboard is stuck. There we go. That's cool. Let me go. I need a bigger draw size than 1. So now I can do 2, and I can figure out my geometry. How do I want it to lay on the dog? Right? And if I'm not happy where this is going, I can hit the V key, and in essence, the white can work as an eraser now. So I can get rid of these lines that I don't want. And I can temporarily go to a larger brush size, right? And then the L key, the L key will turn off lazy mouse on or off, so I can quickly erase something if I want. This and say, let's change this flow here. I need to wrap around better. V key, right? Turn my lazy mouse back on. And what I would do is I would create custom buttons that do all that for me. I'd create a macro. So I could just hit a shortcut that does that for me. It's musical notes. La 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 la. Okay? So this is a way of me first figuring out my topology by using painting, and now I add this to the mesh. Now, the reason why I want to show the ZSphere retopology, even though it's not being used, because we're almost out of time here, is specifically, okay, to hard surface. So if let's grab a sphere here. Let's have some fun. Definitely not black. Let's make it be a basic material. Let's Dynamesh that. Let's say, no, don't keep those. I'm going to start using the trim curve. I'm going to start trimming this down. And we can mirror and weld it over. Start maybe trim like this. Perfect. And let's come across. It comes across like that. And let's mirror and weld that. And then here I want a point of interest like this. Okay, we're mirror and welding that. Okay, and then maybe it comes across actually like this along the top. And then comes like this. So we can mirror and weld, make sure that's all good to go. So you can see we're making very definitive, nice, harsh lines. Okay? So these is more difficult with the topology brush, okay? Because I'm not going to be able to keep my hand as steady, right? Here. It's not going to happen, right? And I know where your head's probably going. Just use that framing mechanism. The problem I have with this is it's dropping, look at all the points, right? Because it's got to drop a point at every single one. I'm trying to get less dense, right? See, it's not going to work. I'm trying to get now this shape that we're creating here to be as few topology as much as possible. So maybe I continue this, and let's even go right to this point where we've got this, and let's make this come like so, across like that, and mirror and weld that over. Oh, and then I don't like that. Let's mirror and weld that over, right? So I want to rebuild this and get it to a really low polygon count, specifically because I want to use ZModeler on this. So I got to adjust my mic. Hold on one sec. So now that I have this, I want to retopologize this. So of course we can use the ZRemesher, right? But I want to have I want maybe this to be made of two faces, this one face right here, right? So what I'm looking at visually is I want to cut across here, this is a polygon, and then this is a polygon. The ZRemesher is not going to get you to that point, and neither is the topology brush. But ZSphere Topology can definitely get me there, right? So now I can grab this ZSphere, go to rigging, select mesh, drop this piece, go to my edit topology now, and click on my edit topology, right? And then now I can start putting points where I want them. I'm going to say I want a point right there, 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 and there, right? So there's my points of interest. And now I can say it wants to go from there to there to there to there, right? And now I need to come across here, but I can finish this up now. I can say it goes from there to there, Bob Ross style, right? And see, coming down here, I'm going to need to come down into here and continue that flow. And then now there's this polygon, right? And you can see I'm building something rather low now in geometry that can work for me. And then I can go from this point to this point. We'll deselect, go from this point to this point, deselect, this point to this point, deselect. And if I hit A, this is what I'm getting. So we'll turn the density down. And then this is what I want, right? I want really low, low, low polygons. Happy little points there, right? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take this mesh that's kind of dense and reduce it way down, and then I am the user and I want to control how is this going to look, right? So looking at this, I'm probably going to now need to come up this way with this, right? And I can work symmetrically. So if I turn symmetry on, I can start working on this symmetrical and coming up the middle, the gut, right? And so I can start working on all this. Okay, so this is just another example of how I'm using it more to do, a very low, low, low piece, a low cage, right? And then building this up and then looking at and seeing what I get, right? Because you could have something that's very dynameshed, okay? Something like I did where I'm using the trim and it's got really ugly geometry and I need to make something I can sculpt on, but I'm really trying to make something also that I can use the ZModeler with. And happy little, nice, someone's 3D printed has the Bob Ross emoji. I love it. Okay, so this is a way for me to use the ZSphere Topology. It's a very popular way for me to go about this, right? Because if I do turn this into a Dynamesh, right, you're not going to have really clean geometry, right? But it's maybe enough for me to start playing. Here, let's go even up a little bit more. Okay, but now I can continue to do things, right? Trim it, remesh that, right? I didn't do the right side. I want this side, so I can use mirror and weld, right? And then remesh that. So we're dealing with 303,000 polygons. I want to reduce this to way less than that. I want to get it all the way down to maybe, 50 polygons if I can, right? That's my goal. Okay, so this would be how I would start to use it, is I use it a lot for hard surfacing. It just comes in very handy for me to start cleaning all this, so I can still use things like DynaMesh. But then I can reverse backwards, go low polygon, and use ZModeler now on this piece. Because right now there's no way I would use ZModeler on this. It's too dense. So I need to now reduce it so I can use ZModeler on this piece. Okay, so we're pretty much out of time. What questions have I missed that you guys can pop in there? And then we can call this a day and be done. All right. So I'm just catching up because you guys' stream's behind me right now. So any questions that I have missed, I'm just going to go through them and see if I missed anything. I know Drust and Ashley and Kingsley and Kyle have been answering all the stuff for you. So I'm assuming you guys are all good to go and crack and set up for any questions that you might have. Again, we want to end with the straw poll. So that's where the voting begins. Blands, I know you want shaders, but I'm out of time. I have another meeting, unfortunately, I have to get to. So I'm not going to be able to really spend a lot of time with the shaders. That's something we can add that. Since you're requesting it, we will put that in the next Did You Know That as one of the options that people want to learn about materials, just materials. Okay. Ashley, what's up? So, any other questions that we have that maybe I didn't miss, or things that we want to go? Make sure you click on that straw poll for the 4 topics. Is posing still winning out here, Kingsley? If you're still there, or Kyle, if you're there, if anybody's left. Yes, BPR settings, absolutely. I would go into BPR settings with the ZBrush to Photoshop. I would definitely touch base on that. To chamfer these edges, Crassio, are you talking about the mesh that I'm looking at right now? I want to chamfer. Are you talking about chamfering the sense of the dense mesh or the low polygon version? Which one are you referring to? What do you want to do? Because this is where, yeah, if I wanted a low polygon one, I could absolutely use dynamic subdiv to chamfer every single edge, and that would be the reason why I would topo it, so I can get it low, low, low cage. This chamfering, I would start using some smoothing, right? It already has a somewhat chamfer, so obviously you can smooth it, right? That'll obviously help you start chamfering. But what I can do, right, is I can use masking as well, right? So in here I can say mask by groups, right? And then I can grow this. So I can grow that mask out and then inverse it. And so now all the edges, right, are exposed. And then now I can just polish these. And then there you go. There's a chamfer, right? And now they're all rounded. Now I got all that rounding happening. Is that what you were looking for? Something like that on the high dense? If it's not the high dense one, then I would use dynamic subdiv to chamfer it, right? So if I had something here, let's duplicate this right quick and gotta make sound effects. It's absolutely mandatory. Okay, and if I start, let's ZModeler some of this up here. You mesh it. Yes. And let's pull that out. Let's pull this out and say something like this. And let's pull that. And now let's just pull these shapes. And let's insert edge loop here, edge loop here, pull these out, and now have something like this, okay? So if I want all of these to have some kind of chamfer, the easiest way on a low polygon is dynamic subdiv, right? So I can turn off this smooth algorithm and turn on this grid, okay? And this is going to allow you to have a coverage where I can bevel it, or I can switch to a chamfer. And if I add a little more grids, it gets more chamfered and more chamfered, right? So on low polygon, I would probably do this. On the other one, okay, that I did, I would do the masking trick that I just showed you. And if you want to, let's see what happens when we clay polish it, for giggles. Let's clay polish this and see what we get. Oh yeah, there you go, boom. Cleans it up. Clear that mask, let's clay polish it one more time. There you go. Boom, nice dense chamfers, rounded. Do you need to see this again? Crassio, or anybody else want to see that again? Because I know I might have been going quick with it. Here, let me go all the way back. All right. So this is, I don't even know what this thing is anymore. Just go with it. It's the crystals. It's the crystal from the dark crystal. Okay. So 3D print using the bevel tool, right, works only on low polygon. So if I have something that's dense like this, I can't do that. Okay, so here we go. Let's do this again. Let's turn on polyframe so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Is I've got polygrouping, right? And I'm going to tell ZBrush, let's use that polygroup to our benefit. So I'm going to tell ZBrush, let's go to polygroups, masking. All right, and right here, just like we were doing the frame mesh with the curves, okay, that's the same thing here. So I'm going to say just the groups, mask off wherever the polygroups are. So the polygroups edging is only getting masked. And what I'm doing is I'm growing it a couple more times, maybe even 3 more times. So now I have a wider range of a mask. So I'll turn off the polyframe, and you can see what we're getting. Now I'm just inversing that, right? So now I have all the edges exposed. It's already smoothing. Of course, if you want, you can blur it some more. And then now that's sharp. And now all I need to do is go to deformation, and then I can polish it once if I want to at 100%, and then there you go. And then now it's got more of a chamfer, rounded edge to it. Right? And I clear my mask, and then this is what we get. Now, if I want to sharpen this up even a little bit more, okay, I go to my geometry, open up clay polish, and I just click this button right here. Boom. Right? And then there it's sharpening it up a little bit for me. But it's still keeping that chamfer look. I can even have fun with this. We can do, how about a negative edge and make it kind of like that. Right? So you can have some fun with this and almost make a soccer ball look to it. So you can do something like that. That's pretty cool. And then I'll go back to 0 and then clay polish that up, and now I can get that look. Boom. Super simple, easy. Right? We could even, while we're telling the edge to go negative, we can tell the surface to go positive. So let's go back and polish that, and now you get this look. Right? And then I'll clear the mask. Let's put these back to their defaults and clay polish that to clean it up. And maybe a little bit more, and then now I have that look. Pretty simple, right? Bam! It's becoming a craziness, bamness. Okay? So you can see what we get. And this is why I always say ZBrush can be like an onion or a cake, right? That I start, and then now I can continue to sculpt now with this, right? Because I've got a hard surface in here, right? And I can dig into this if I want to. Or I can retopologize this, right? I can smooth it out if I want to. So the thing to keep in mind, when you guys are going to use this clay polish, when it's doing it, there's actually a mask, very slight mask that's being applied to the edging. So make sure you clear your mask out. Here, let's see if I can, here, I'll show you visually so you can see this. Let's go here. There, that should be enough. And let's divide this up enough like that. All right, that should be good enough. Let's see. All right, and you can see the edges? I just inverse the mask in essence, right? So by default, the sharp, sharp, sharp edges get masked, and we polish everything else in between. Okay, so if we did here, let's go backwards. Let's try. I'm trying to think of something visually to make it easy to make sure you guys completely understand this. Let's do this. Let's do a cut across like this, right? So this is very sharp, and this is rounding, right? So this doesn't have any sharp angle to it, but if I do say something like that, now we're getting sharp angles. But this inside is soft, right? So if I clay polish this, you'll notice some movement in here. So if I clay polish it, keep clay polishing it, just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's keeping the edges very sharp, but smoothing this all out. So here's where you guys could really see it. Let's do a little craziness here. Again, my go-to ugly brush, and do something like, well, it might help if I turn on Z-Add. Let's do this. In fact, let's even divide it up a little bit and do something like this. So watch what happens now when we do clay polish. Right, so there's one. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Look at the sculpt. Right, so see, the peaks are kind of being left. So it's cool for maybe skin pores. I use it for wood work. So what I mean by that is in the brush palette, watch this. I'll take this slash brush. This brush, it's pretty harsh, right? I can make something kind of look like wood. Cartoony looking wood. Just go with me, would you? You can do stuff like that, and it comes off, and just make that kind of like looking like a wood texture kind of point to it, right? Not bad, but watch when we apply clay polish. And I keep applying it, and keep applying it, and keep applying it, right? It's actually even helping it a little bit more. And then now maybe we'll polish this up a little bit. Just soften the whole thing, and then there you go. Right? So you can do stuff like that. And I haven't even played with any of these settings yet. Okay? And then you got to think about back to skin pouring, this thing about if I push in, right? And then now let's only look at this portion, inverse that. And now let's clay polish the heck out of this. Just keep playing. And you see the masking's there, so we can clear the mask now. So I've been clicking like a rabbit here. Thumper, right? And then this is actually creating a very cool look, right, for painting. And you can see now what I got. And then let's say, all right, now let's go one more time. And let's clay polish that now. And then now hit it. And then boom, you get maybe some kind of little skin, like it was in a burnt or a zombie. All right, so there you have it. So we got to call it. I got to unfortunately go on to another meeting. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting Did You Know That? Looks like we're doing posing at the next Did You Know That? It looks like we're keeping ABBK alive. Kyle, thank you for that, buddy. Thanks for bringing that together. We're going to make an emoji of ABBK. For those that just joined us, ABK means we're always blaming Kyle when something happens and something goes wrong. And don't forget, we can throw it to Kingsley too. You know, ABBK works for Kingsley as well. So thank you again for tuning in, watching. Hope you really enjoyed the cast. We are going to be looking at posing next one, which is in 2 weeks. Mr. Joseph Drust is next week in this day and close to this time slot where he's doing the Ask ZBrush. So hopefully you guys are taking a lot from this. I appreciate you tuning in. in watching this. I see that our viewership's actually going up right now, which is too bad because unfortunately I do got to go. Let me see if there's any last minute questions that we have here that I can answer. Druss, did I miss anything? He said, I think I got all the questions. So that's good. Let me look at the... I'm glad Jubalala 2. You're learning a lot. That's great. Zam! Dougie, Zam. That could work too. Zip! Okay. So have a wonderful week. Please let us know if you need anything. If you do have requests for Did You Know That, you're going to want to email us at streaming@pixologic.com. 3D Print has just reminded us, folks, to always hashtag ABBK. Kingsley, if you're going to put up, again, we're streaming at pixologic.com. Specifically, if you want to make a request for what we can put in the straw poll for the next Did You Know That? Okay. And this. I love it, Blance. Kyle, he just dropped it on you. He said, hashtag ABBK, that this stream is ending. Oh, bringing tears to my eyes. This is so good. I love it. Yes! By the way, the next podcast is with Cesar DeCall Jr., and I did that one, and we bring up ABBK in that one. We're gonna make this last, even if it's only for a month. Come on, we're just having fun with Kyle. We know it's not going to last forever, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, guys, have a wonderful evening. If you're somewhere else located, not in North America, please let us know if you need anything. Even if you want to send a question in to me, you can send it in the streaming at pixologic.com, and then I'll be able to answer you. Okay. Signing off. Have a wonderful evening.